All right, we are live. Hello.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Facebook Live with Dr. Nelva Bryant. My name is Greta Russo. And of course, this is Dr. Bryant on here with me. And we are excited for today's Facebook Live because of our guests. But before we go into all that, Dr. Bryant, please introduce yourself to everyone.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Bryant, Nelva Bryant. I'm a veterinarian and I work in the airline industry. I work in the airline industry. My phone just dinged and got my attention. Sorry. But I work in the airline industry and I've been doing so since around 2018. I work with Delta Airlines. I was brought on staff to help review and revise policies for animal transportation. But as I was sharing with Greta, I do more than that. I do a whole lot, actually. As I feel about it, I ensure I'm bridging animal welfare with aviation logistics as far as that and everything, and ensuring animals get to their destination safely. So that's what I do for Delta, and I love it. I love the role, and it's a lot of things that I do working with them. Aside from that, though, I developed When Pets Fly as a resource or a platform to share pet-centric travel education. When Pets Fly was developed during a pandemic, so we're really working on 5 years being as far as sharing this information. Initially, like I said, pet-centric travel education, because being in the role that I have with Delta, I started seeing some things that pet owners could do to properly prepare their pets for air travel. So I kind of integrated my insight there with also being a clinical veterinarian and kind of merged things together to share information that way to pet owners and also to fellow veterinarians as far as my findings. As I said, When Pets Fly has been 5 years. Greta joined me probably about 4 years ago, and it was kind of her idea to start doing these Facebook Lives. And these are our way to share information, as I always say, with different stakeholders in the animal transportation industry. We have various guests. Today, we got a repeat guest. She's always with us. Actually, Rochelle is with us multiple times a year. That's how great she is. But she shows a different perspective that we find actually is kind of similar to pet travel. She shares a perspective as far as zoo animal transportation and how you prepare various zoo animals for transport by air, which is a lot. And it's interesting because there's a lot of similarities between for a pet owner to prepare their pets for air travel. So love having her on here to just share her insights as being a zoo animal transportation expert and also a zoo registrar. So at this point, she's a retired zoo registrar. So love hearing information that she has to share. But let me stop for a second. Greta, introduce yourself and let's talk about anything you feel that's relevant before we get started into the session with Rochelle.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Greta Russo, and I am Dr. Bryant's, I guess, left hand or right hand in marketing. Your right hand. In marketing, When Pets Fly. It's been an incredible journey and have been learning along the way, just like all of you, how much there is to know to make sure that all animals, not just our pets, enjoy their transportation in a healthy, safe way. And that's what's most important. Dr. Bryant, being the only veterinarian in the airline industry, is doing her best to make sure there is strides of improvement, and she can only do that with collaborations and really leaning on her resources, which is different friends, or I like to say stakeholders or touch points within the animal transportation industry, because all together we make sure that we all look out for the welfare of any animal, especially when they're in our care during flight. So it's been a definite journey and a wonderful experience. So thank you for having me. Let's see, there's actually a few things that have come up into the news lately. Number one, I wanted to remind everyone, let me pull this up. Now our platform has a feature where we can pull up things while we're talking, photos or even documents. But we mentioned this before when there was changes earlier in the year as far as travel planning. So I like to just keep up on that. But this now is the time, I mentioned this before, if you're planning a trip to Europe, you've got to get ready for the new ETIAS, which is what you're going to need to go into Europe. And this especially affects people from the United States. And I'm not sure all the countries in particular, but if you go online to look up the rules around it, you'll know if you need to pay this extra fee and get this document. But Travel Noir, which is who this report is from, they are a very reputable travel company. They indicate before you plan that trip to Europe, make sure you are ready on this travel authorization system. The European Union is implementing a new travel authorization system called European Travel Information and Authorization System, which is ETIAS. It will affect American travelers and citizens from citizens from 58 other countries who currently enjoy visa-free travel to the European Union. So, definitely go to ETIAS, their website, so that you can find out if you are from a citizen from one of the 58 countries, as well as the United States, to see if now you need to pay for a new type of travel voucher into the different union countries that you're going to be visiting. Dr. Bryant, has, as far as an airline is concerned, have you been getting a lot of questions from your loyal Delta travelers about this new documentation and what they need to do?
You know what? Thank you for sharing this, because this is new news for me. So I definitely need to research this further to find out if the additional requirements that will be needed. I'm hoping that this information will be readily available on the USDA pet travel website for travel to, say, EU countries or what have you. I'm hoping it'll be available there, but if not, if you can link that somewhere so we can get access to it, that would be perfect, because that's something I need to research and learn. But as of yet, no, I'll be honest with you, Greta. Thank you, because I hadn't heard of this new requirement for 20. So is it starting January 1, 2026?
Well, actually, what they did is they announced it earlier in the year when I was announcing other changes in January, but it was to go live as of August. So it's live now. Let's see, I think if you go to the ETIAS, their website, they would have it. I do remember knowing from my reading that this has nothing to do with animals. So if you're taking your dogs or cats, it doesn't have anything to do with them. But again, as you being the traveler, primary person responsible, no, not you, Dr. Bryant, but the person who's traveling, anyone traveling to Europe.
Okay. Thank you, though. That's actually, thank you. Yeah. I might want to go to EU country in 2026. I don't know, but it's interesting though. So it doesn't impact pets per se. This is just for people that are transporting. You're saying, going.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So it's we keep telling them about all the steps they got to do. I just want to make sure people know about this step as well.
No. Well, you know what?
Absolutely.
It's perfect to know, because again, for those who traveling with your pet, you have to realize there's additional things for you besides your passport. So that's really important for you to travel to countries. And then, of course, if you bring your pet, please don't forget the USDA pet travel website. They'll have information on that destination country, and then work with a USDA accredited veterinarian to ensure you meet all the requirements as you move forward.
Yeah. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And not only that, so last Friday, I was tongue-tied in making the announcement about Virgin, and I was saying Virgin, I was saying their Virgin, what was I saying? I was confusing their boats with their airline.
When you say Virgin, personally, I go straight to cruise because it's adult only, and that's my dream. It's like, I just want to go on one of those cruises. So that I probably messed you up, because as soon as you said that, I was like, oh, the cruise line. But yeah, I do know that there's a Virgin airline, but I don't know why. In my mind, the cruise. I think of, when I say Virgin, I think of cruise. So, but yes. But you were saying.
Well, I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
Yes, I wanted to clarify with everybody. I was speaking about Virgin Airlines was now accepting cats and dogs in their flights. So I just wanted to clarify that. And this is Virgin out of Australia. And the difference with them is that they are allowing, they're allowing them, but there are designated roads that are having the cats and dogs. And they are doing this as an answer to, oh, I don't want to sit next to a cat or dog because I have allergies. So now they figure if they put them in one spot, you know, you don't have to worry about that area. Because we had a few people write into us on Instagram and I had to answer them back, but I wanted to make that clear here as well.
Oh, that's perfect.
Now, all that being said, yeah, absolutely. All that being said, I wanted to bring up new news, and now I'm learning, bring some proof with me so I don't get tongue-tied. Right. So Star of the Sea welcomes Chief Dog Officer Sailor home as new resident and family pup. So with this, I wanted to point out that, you know, that this is not, I want to make preference, this is not the cruise that is all pets that I pointed out before, but instead this is an actual ship, one of the brands within, I'm sorry, one of the ships within the Royal Caribbean brand. So this is, and what they have are, they're not service dogs. They're leaning more towards their emotional support dogs. And also brand officers, so that people, my apologies everyone, so that people are able to, you know, feel comfort while they are on the ship and they can play with the dog. So that's their point. And I'm finding a lot of brands within transportation are bringing in these dogs, well-trained dogs, to be emotional support. So they're more than just in the courtroom. There's even airlines and airports that are bringing in dogs to help ease your stress and anxiety. And also, of course, everyone knows that animals go into hospitals for that same reason. And now, and I wouldn't think people on a cruise would have stress and anxiety, but here we see a sailor now joins fellow officer Rover from Icon of the Seas, officially becoming part of the Royal Caribbean Chief Dog Officers team. So that's now, yeah, they have 2 dogs. So
let me add one thing there, though. I don't know if they considered emotional support, because emotional support really goes into, say, for one person. I think they're considered more therapy dogs because it's wide open. They are there, therapy for everybody. In my mind, emotional support is almost like a single person, you know, there to put. So I think they're considered therapy dogs. But either way, I think it's really important what they're doing here. Cruise line. Okay, I'll be honest with y'all. I'll share something personal about me with going on a cruise. My first cruise was wonderful, but it took a while before I decided to go on a cruise because I was petrified, to be honest with you. Just a thought. It may sound crazy, and I know it sounds stupid, but I was like, hey, the Titanic sank. So I personally was just like, nah, I don't know if I want to do this, but I'm glad I did, because it was the most wonderful experience that I had. I've only been on 2 cruises. I'm hoping my next cruise will be something like cruise to Panama, where I can go to multiple countries and wake up in a new country every day. Is my next goal that I want to do. Hopefully 2026 and everything like that. But I can see it. It could be scary. I can imagine people being unsure. And also for those who are true, you know, dog lovers, missing their pets at home. It's nice to go and pet another dog. Feel that comfort too.
Yeah, you're right in everything you're saying. You know, I kept thinking, why would people have a problem going on with a cruise if they chose to go on that? You know, it's not like you gotta take a cruise. It's not a necessity like an airline. But I get what you're saying. You know, when you're homesick for your pet, you know, having I guess something to stand in for your pet will make a big difference.
Oh, yeah.
Some new news, we've got an airline that's going out of commission. So let me tell you about this one. This was reported on Mega Aviation. After a decade in the skies, all Nippon's which is also known as ANA, All Nippons Airline, beloved R2D2 themed jet, which is a Boeing 787-9 Dreamliner, wrapped in the galaxy's most famous astromech, will retire. It retired already as of August 6th. The farewell flights are were set for NH-102 from Tokyo, Haneda to Washington Dulles, and NH-101 on the return the same day. Introduced as the first aircraft in NAA's Star Wars projects, JA-873A made its inaugural commercial flight on October 18th, 2015. So it's been 10 years from Haneda to Vancouver. The striking livery turned heads worldwide, marking the start of a one-of-a-kind decade blending aviation and pop culture. On board, the experience was as unique as the paint job, R2D2 themed cups, headrests, crew aprons, and boarding music brought fans closer to a galaxy far, far away. For Star Wars and aviation enthusiasts alike, it became an icon at airports across the globe. Following its last mission, which was on the 6th, which was 2 days ago, ANA states the jet will begin the standard retirement process, its next chapter of mystery. We like to think of R2 as heading off on a new adventure of its own, ANA wrote. So I wanted to just share that about so that's pretty exciting. I actually remember when it launched 10 years ago because I thought it was just so cool to have a Star Wars themed airline. So it's sad to see it come to an end.
Yeah, wasn't aware of it. That's kind of cool. Kind of cool.
Now, so I'm assuming Delta doesn't have any type of theme type of stuff.
They do. They do. I'll be honest. I haven't paid much attention to it, but they do. I know they have some. I mean, as for Delta, this is their 100th year anniversary. They do have some branded aircrafts. I think they have some that's also that are branded for breast cancer, if I remember correctly. But they do have some branded flights, aircrafts. But I'm sorry, I haven't paid that much attention to it. But I know they do have them. And this year, like I said, this year being 100 years in service, they have something branded for that as well.
Oh, fantastic. Well, let's see. And then one last thing in news, which I thought was pretty interesting. Travel and Leisure, as of today, just put out a report. There's only four seen there because of our footer, but I'll read them all. But Travel and Leisure put out a report because reportedly this year, there's a lot of Americans who are leaving the country. And so I've even noticed an uptick of different countries really trying to allure us to come move to where they are, especially Italy. I'm keeping an eye on you, Italy, and you're taunting all of our followers with how pet friendly you are. So I'm really considering a house, but anyway, so Travel and Leisure has listed the best countries for us Americans to move to. So for best value cost of living, it's Lisbon. Best safety is Oslo. Most walkable is Amsterdam. Best for the nightlife and you young folks is Madrid. And the last one, best for foodies, is Copenhagen. So, if you want some suggestions, Travel and Leisure just put out their report today for you to check out which is your favorite country, and they have long reasons why. You can consider those countries as someplace to have a second home or to move permanently. So,
yeah, I do. That's interesting. I do have a veterinary colleague who said that she's leaving the country. I think she's going somewhere. It might be Italy where she's going, but she was asking. We were communicating because she was trying to transport her daughter's, it's a reptile. I forget exactly what it was, but transporting a reptile internationally. So that's something that not easy. So stuff things to consider when you're traveling. So folks, if you decide to leave the United States and you have a dog, cat, or a household snake or whatever reptile, I'm here to provide assistance with that process. I actually just helped someone else with someone who was basically, she's moving to Armenia with her cat, and my goodness, the amount of information I shared with her is loaded. So you might think, oh, she's just going to the country. You mentioned now going to EU, there might be additional requirements for that passenger. So, but again, if you're traveling with a pet internationally, I was looking at the email that I sent her. Goodness, I gave her information on, number one, where to find the information to that country. So the USDA pet travel website, gave her that resource. But then you're not alone with this. A lot of times pet owners might think that they're alone about as far as getting the whole process together, but actually work with a USDA accredited veterinarian, and they're to assist you with that whole process. So, both of you work together and make sure your pet meets the requirements of that destination. So that's there. I gave her that information. You got to make sure, as far as the method of transport, if it's in cabin, you've got to make sure you have a nice soft-sided carrier. We have recommendations on our website on the best carriers to travel with your pet in cabin. And then also if it's going by cargo, we've got IATA compliant crates there that's on the website as well. I'm trying to think what else. She was thinking about coming back to the country after a certain period of time. I said, well, you got to make sure you meet CDC's requirements. So I gave her information on that. And then it's more than just coming back to with CDC, your destination state has requirements, and she didn't know if she was going to be in California or New York. So I gave her information on all that as far as the requirements coming back. So there's a lot you have to do if you're traveling with your pet internationally. So just be mindful of that. But I am here to assist you and with that whole process.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that was all a mouthful. And after all of that, let's bring in our dear friend, Rochelle. She was waiting backstage. Hello, Miss Rochelle.
I think I'm frozen.
I think you might be a little bit, and you know what? We're going to just do it because you know what? You might be frozen, but the information you're going to share is extremely valuable. So as long as you don't mind it's frozen, we're listening to you. And,
okay, that sounds good.
Don't worry about it. Yeah, you've got a lot of valuable information.
Yes. And we're so happy to have you here, Miss Rochelle. If you could please tell us who you are, briefly, what you've done, and then we will get rocking and rolling on all the information you want to share.
Okay, so I started in animal care as a frontline zookeeper. I was a keeper for 30 years. The last few years of it, I was a supervisor. And then I started working in the office as a registrar. And the last 20 years of my zoo time was as a registrar. And I did the permits and licenses, the records management for the animal collection and the history of it. And so it was a big zoo and with a lot of animals. So there was a lot of records. And then we migrated the data into a web-based technology. The newer system is called ZIMS, and that's the record system that a lot of zoos globally use and aquariums to monitor their animals or record data about their animals. So since I retired in 2021, I've been doing pro bono consulting for people that have animals. I'm an animal care specialist. I'm a permit specialist. I'm a shipping logistics specialist. I teach also. I've retired from teaching for the AZA animal transport course, but I was the course administrator for a period of time and then an instructor for all that time. So I like to help people. And so that's why I'm doing my consulting pro bono in retirement. And but I have a real niche community because it's primarily exotic animals.
Okay. Well, we love having you on because as Dr. Bryant mentioned, it's so, even though you're dealing with zoo animals, wild animals, it's so closely related to how we deal with pets, cats and dogs, and everything else people will keep in their homes. It's all a lot of the same thing, and plus it's always nice to hear how learn more about different things in the world. So we always find you fascinating.
So at the top, you were talking about the new requirement for the European Union, for the Europe. If a zoo was shipping an animal and they had an attendant, they would have to factor that into the shipping logistics.
Yep.
So that means visas, so there's permits for the people too.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And, budget, and there has to be paperwork run through, to authorize the staff to go international transport. There's just as much at times, and you have to get the person authorized. If it's a cargo plane and they're in a jump seat, you can't just buy a ticket and get on. They have to have background check and all of that stuff. And so it's a big, and that's a big job a lot of times that you have to do when you have larger animals with like elephants or large marine mammals, that they have to also have aquatics involved with the transport. So that's very complicated animal transport.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
Definitely.
And
I was going to share a little bit about it too, because a lot of on the commercial airlines can transport some zoo animal species, but it all depends on their size.
Right.
Fitting through the cargo hold door. But then there's others, as you said, might have to go on a freighter aircraft where that's all they do is carry freight because they're huge. And with that, Greta and I were talking offline, something simple as a horse. Horses have to be transported in a cargo freighter because, and usually they have to have an attendant, as you're saying, with them. So,
yep. So that means you got to have the paperwork for the person and the animal.
Yeah, definitely.
And we talk so much about animals, and we are animals, focused and stuff like that. I wanted to bring it up because I didn't want people to assume only the animals need paperwork, and I only need to concentrate on that. When you as a person, you need paperwork too.
And like a zoo would be also possibly involved in international programs where they're working with a government to government thing. So then they're collaborating the transport with the government, like if they're doing animal releases and maybe only the government's allowed to fly into that area, it's a sensitive ecological area or something like that. Or you're in another country and only the military is allowed to fly in there. You don't, there's all different kinds of situations that you have to adapt to.
Yeah. And we usually, the type of transport you're speaking about, what makes the news a lot is when the pandas from China are coming to visit, so we hear about exactly what you're saying, Rochelle. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, the pandas for many years, and recently, I'm not sure, because there was some political back and forth and pandas were taken away from certain institutions, but they came back, and like FedEx has supplied the transport for them for many, many years. They've been like the main transport. So the whole skin of the plane would be a panda, and so and they had this really cool article in the newspaper that showed the crate, how it was designed, what it would have, what different parts were used for. Then they had a schematic of from start to finish of the air transport. I mean, it was so educational that I wish that we could do more of that for people so they can empathize with the need to follow the rules, because they're put in place to help the animal. Even if there's a disaster or a weather event that things have to move quick, or things are just do what you can, you still got to go through certain authorizations. They don't just let anybody go there, especially in a ground zero situation,
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And that leans into very good lean in, Rochelle, to what we're going to be talking about today. And I saw how you set that up. But how you,
And you know what?
how zoo,
Yeah, and before we get started with knowing more about what you're doing today, I really wanted we would kind of focus on things that I'm really happy to hear. Again, we talk about a lot of different things, but I want people to understand also the different roles that people play in the zoo environment, different things you can do. Because I wonder with you, Rochelle, before you get started, I was just wondering, when you started working in the zoo, did you ever imagine yourself being and moving as you where you are today? Did you ever do that?
Never. I was afraid of computers. I mean, I was started as a zoo volunteer before there was cell phones and computers.
Mhm.
You know, we still used a typewriter. So to have left the zoo industry as with a job that was on the computer, analyzing data and managing records data, you know, I mean, not at all. But I like to keep learning. I like to help people, and I like innovation. You know, sometimes there's better ways to do things that make it easier for the regulator, and that's what we need to do as you know, animal shippers or animal care people, or even in an emergency. You develop a rapport long before you need to use that rapport with that regulatory body, and that's the way that you are successful, because then it's a smooth transition. You know each other's documents. You may already have them in the queue for an emergency. You know, and it just makes things go so much smoother, and which ends up helping the animal more.
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, we are here to talk about natural disasters and how zookeepers' roles in animal preparation for emergencies, disasters, and the role zookeepers play in recovery at zoos. And I know that we are in the heart of hurricane season here on the, I guess, south side of America. And I guess earlier we had fires over in California. So I say that to point out that different areas in the world are going to have different natural disasters, but zookeepers all over the world have to know how to react and respond and make sure every animal and person gets out safely and can return safely. So please,
Yeah, I
Rochelle.
don't know. You talk about the fires. I don't know if you saw in the news recently a bridge that was a historical wooden bridge caught on fire, and it was the connection between Arizona and California. So now
Wow.
just think, you were planning a long land transport with a hippo. Now you can't go through that bridge. Now what are you going to do? You know, I mean, when the Baltimore bridge got hit by that ship and brought it down, that was a major import export port for the United States, and it was also the bridge that made your transport shorter by land, because it circumvented this long road. So land transports, like air transports, take a long time to plan. So, you know, like for us, the longest part is animal adaptation. You know, it can take up to a year to train an elephant, depending on how long the transport's going to be and how long the animal's got to stay in the crate. So, yeah, the zookeeper is integral in that part. And sometimes they end up being like, if they're the primary caregiver of that animal, they will be the attendant sent with the animal, because then for certain species, there's training involved, and you have to break in the next zookeeper, and you have to turn over the trust from you to them. And so there's a human animal bond aspect involved with that too. So it's just like with your pet at home. Although zoo animals are not pets, your pet at home keys into your emotions, and the zookeepers that are the primary keepers for certain species, they key into that zookeeper's emotions when there's an emergency. So they'll either be really good and act quickly if they have a good tight bond or if they're injured, that bond may not make any difference. Just like a dog that gets hit by a car, and the owner goes up to retrieve it and it bites them. So I've had that happen with a little poodle that I had. So you don't know what they're going to do. So with exotic species, it's even more dangerous if you don't have that tight connection of know their behavior and can condition their behavior. And sometimes it doesn't really take a long, drawn out training process. It depends on the length of time they're going to be in the shipping container and how used to that container they are. Sometimes you can just make moving them around from place to place part of the routine. Like if it's a small mammal, and a lot of the outreach animals, the ambassador animals, go through that process where they habituate them so that they don't freak out, because they're going to be traveling a lot, going to a school, going to an auditorium, So there's a lot that caregiver for that animal has that helps the institution or the organization that owns the animal to do a successful job with the animal.
That's fantastic. Rochelle, you brought up something really interesting, and I'm not sure if people caught on. Well, I shouldn't say that. I had a question as soon as you said it. So I automatically assumed zookeepers and the staff, you all train for, in case of emergency at the zoo. But when you are out on the road transporting the animals, do you also train for in case of an emergency, like the ones that you brought up? Did the drivers and the animal handlers, did they already have training and know what to do when the bridge was out, or anything else?
So there's some institutions do their own land transport. Some institutions would have to have special equipment to do that, so they hire somebody. And some institutions have such volume that it's cheaper for them to do commercial transport instead of them doing it themselves. Also, sometimes, which gets worked into regional collection plans for a breeding program, if there's certain moves that are supposed to take place, those zoos will get together and they'll split the cost. Maybe they can drop one off and pick one up from the same institution. I was involved with the paperwork trail for the transaction that was 2 gorillas switching zoos. That was a breeding recommendation. So we split the cost of the truck. We had to have a refrigerated truck because it was being done at a time of the year when it was too hot to spend extended time in a cage. But there was also 2 experienced, the zookeeper that worked with the animal, the supervisor of the area. So they had 2 people so that you could have switching of drivers, because there's road regulations for commercial truckers that they're only supposed to be on the road so many hours. Well, you have to have multiple drivers with animals because they have to keep moving. You can't, and you may not be permitted to stop where they want you to stop after 4 hours or after 8 hours. So they have multiple licensed drivers that are able to drive without them having to, and they have sleepers, or else overnight they'll stay at a hotel. But depending on what species, they can't even do that. If you've got an elephant, you can't just stop at a Days Inn and park your truck, overnight in a parking lot, Right. So there's different things that you have to do depending on what you're shipping. If it's a bird, which birds and small reptiles and medium to small mammals are probably some of the most frequently shipped species or families of animals. So with birds, you can do a smaller airplane and be able to get it shipped from point A to point B. Or if you got eggs, the airline will allow you to bring the eggs in cabin, because you have to watch the temperature and the humidity of certain species of eggs, so there's, and so if that occupies a seat, you got to pay for the seat and the person. But still, like a lot of times, it's a cool PR thing to make a big deal about it, and then you get sponsorship, and then it becomes something that's a win-win for the local businesses or the communities.
Yeah, absolutely. So we were going into zookeepers and helping to prepare the animals there for emergencies and disasters. I guess like in Florida, you go through flooding, so the zoos down there probably have to move a lot. Can you tell us what goes into planning for these emergencies?
Well, there's a very large group of not just agencies, but zoological institutions, private institutions, local municipalities that have at least know about each other. Some states, it's very domestic oriented and they don't think about the zoos. But the AZA, ZAA, people working with ZRA, the records keepers work with different agencies, and they have to deal with the paperwork for the, like if there's an emergency, like for instance, something you never think about. If you own an animal that's a large megafauna invertebrate, high profile animal, and that animal's on loan to another institution and some emergency happens and the animal has to be dispatched for human safety, that animal may be very important to tissue samples, to collect gametes for reproduction. And so you have to coordinate the approvals with the government and the owner and the holder. And, it's a real highly involved thing. But like the zookeeper is the one there dealing with the animals. There's a thing called a recall command. A recall command is probably one of the most important things you can teach the zoo animals, because that means somebody drops a shoe in the exhibit.
No.
A kid falls in the exhibit, a camera, whatever it is, they can recall the animal to come back inside and be secured so it's safe to go out there and do whatever you got to do. Or, for example, if, say, there's a flood and they have to crate up that animal and it's a flash flood. I've been watching these videos of these flash floods and how short of a period of time people have to respond. I think, thinking about being a zoo in a situation like that, there's animals that you're just not going to be able to help. If you don't know anything about the possibility of this flash flood being around. So I would think, if you're a zoo, you would have to be, constantly be like a fisherman almost, what's the weather report? What's the high tide? What is the humidity, the heat? Because animals can succumb to heat during an emergency if you lose power. It depends on what species.
You make me think of, at least here living in Atlanta, goodness, sometimes we get so much rain and flash floods in certain parts of downtown, and Zoo Atlanta is actually not that far from where these floods happen, but you never hear anything in the news with Zoo Atlanta having any issues. So I'm sure either they know how to handle it, it doesn't hit the news, or it's in a location where it's, in a sense, flood proof potentially,
or prepared for, they're coming up with things all the time now. And this is where, like, if you're a homeowner, you got to put your shutters up. They have these things now you can put across doors and water walls that you can put around, like the emergency room in Tampa has a water wall that goes up. It's like a 6 foot or 7 foot wall that's waterproof. And it worked during the last hurricane season. And it was amazing to see this thing and the water right upside it. So the zookeeper would be the one figuring out, where do we move the animals to, there's an emergency flood thing, we got this water wall, where can we put it? Them, and maybe depending on the size of the zoo, they may have to wear multiple hats of maintenance and zookeeper and supervisor. The smaller the zoo, the more hats they wear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and again, and we talked about this before our session here. Again, I'm glad you're bringing this topic up as far as being zookeepers and their importance and everything with just really the everyday care and disaster response with zoo animals. But I think it's important for folks to understand and realize the different roles and positions within the zoos that you could do. And for those who are interested in working with animals and that have, I don't know personally if I will have the guts to be working with a zoo animal. Actually, I know me. I'm a chicken. I couldn't work with zoo animals, but there might be others that might feel like have a desire to work with animals, and this is an option for them.
Yes, this is one of many animal careers. You can be in fish and wildlife. You can be in USDA. You can be a local park ranger. You can be a zookeeper. You can be a veterinarian. Animal management. Also, you have the upper management that operates the whole zoo. There's the director, sometimes an assistant director if the zoo is big enough. Curators, veterinarians, HR people, public relations people, conservation people, so there's all kinds of education. I could go on and on how many members of the village there are that make a good zoo and a good team of people that are, doing things the right way, cross training. People don't want to be static in the same role and job all their life. Some people are happy to be that, maybe they get into it and they study it. And to them, it's like that species is a lifelong journey for them. While others may want to do a variety of things. So, and I know people that, were zookeepers that became vet techs and, or aquarists. So any kind of cross training that people can do, especially for paperwork, there's a thing called the Animal Data Transfer Form that the American Association of Zookeepers has. And I think it's now in an electronic format. We had triplicate paper, a pink copy, a green copy. We wrote it by hand. If we were fancy, we typed it so people could read the writing. But so the zookeeper put on there, what's the diet problems? Does it have a certain supplement it's got to take, and you can only feed it in this one thing? Are you doing training with the animal? Does it have behavioral issues? Is it a good mother? Has it had babies before? Because it may be being transferred for reproduction, and if it's a proven mother, that's a better thing. If it's not, then they got to pay attention. Mm-hmm. And have a backup plan to pull the baby, which the zookeepers and the vet staff are also involved in. So, sometimes they see things that they can't really say exactly what it was, but they got a feeling from something in the animal's behavior that there's something they have to do a certain way, or that they're afraid and back off, so they have a more intimate knowledge of that animal because they're with it every day.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Think about, you mentioned, think about nutritionists that need to be in that environment too, that have an interesting way. That's huge too. And also just behavior and learning about the different behaviors of different zoo animals that are there. There's a lot that a person can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And exotic animals bring exotic problems. There's niche groups of rescue organizations that are helping zoos and aquariums and nature centers and rehab facilities. Wildlife rehabbers need help too sometimes, Mm-hmm. So ZDR3, the Zoo Disaster Rescue Recovery, I'm going to mess it up because it's such a cool organization. I just call it ZDR3, but they are one of the premier groups in the United States, and they've even gone to Puerto Rico on work out in the field, Guam. So they're very supportive of the exotic animal community, and so they rely heavily on the frontline workers when they come in to help them clean up the facilities and repair things and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's good.
Rochelle, I have a question. So a registrar, is that let me back up. So a zookeeper person, the person who has actual hands on the animal, is a part of their position is to be a registrar, or is a registrar a person who is in charge of the communications and they do all the records and they'll talk to the zoo person and put down what they said?
Okay, so it's a little of both. The registrar gets the data from the zookeeper about the animal. How much does it weigh? The behavioral changes. It got injured today. It's at the vet's for the next couple of days. It's, all of that stuff about that animal is in focus by the vet, written down a certain way, but the zookeeper keeps track of all of it in their daily keeper report, and that's what goes to the registrar, and that data gets put in the record in certain places. Now, because of this new system, ZIMS, the Zoological Information Management System, which is only one of some other ones, there's also TRACS and animal care software. So there's other zoo and aquarium softwares, but ZIMS is the one that's the largest and the most global. It has integrated the medical records, the stud book records, the individual animal records, the collection management records. I mean, all of these records are in one system now that's in real time, and it's global. And if, say, Zoo A and Zoo B are trading animals, they can open up permission for them to see the records, and they get a whole view without being able to change anything for security reasons, but they get read-only access to the animal's records. So depending on what you give them access to, they will have the vet records, the individual records, the stud book records, all of the things that they're given access to see if they're in the same record system.
Okay. Yeah. When you were talking about all the different positions that you can do around animals, I had always pictured the registrar as the admin communication, like portion of everything that is like the bloodline, and it keeps everybody informed. Whereas zookeeper is the person hands-on with the animal, building the bond with them. And so for a second, I wasn't sure if that was one and the same person or two separate people.
It's both. Yeah. Depending on the size of the institution. And there are zoos that are small enough that the director is also a veterinarian, and the vet tech is also a registrar and a zookeeper, and the director may participate in zookeeping too. There are other zoos that are so large and have so many departments that the director may not even have time to see an animal. And because he's doing business operation things or fundraising things. And then, then the hierarchy gets broken down into smaller and smaller parts. So there's frontline supervisors, then there's department supervisors, curators of either a part of the zoo or a species. There's elephant curators, primate curators, depending on how big you are. So right. I always look at things with a broad scope and don't want to talk too high up, too large, or too small. You have to kind of talk about things. And I've worked in all different sized institutions. I've worked at a private facility that was an old primate facility called Monkey Jungle in Miami to San Diego Zoo, which is like acres and acres of sprawling, back before the monkey yard was destroyed. I mean, there was parts of the zoo where I worked that don't exist anymore because they put in these larger, more multi-species exhibits, and it's actually more educational that way because they learn more about the different species of animals and how they interact with each other. And it's interesting more for the animals and the zookeepers.
Okay. You brought up a very interesting point, that there are different size zoos. Some people might be used to the small, only seeing small mom and pops, in their town. And some people might only know the big ones that do a really good job, like the San Diego Zoo, Atlanta Zoo, as well as Philadelphia Zoo.
Right.
So I guess as far as zookeepers and registrar people, I'm wondering, even though people, because of the staff size, they will wear different hats and do multiple jobs. I guess my question is, the jobs themselves, do they change because of the size, or is it the same job no matter the size, but people might just be doing multiple hats?
It's the same job. So at one time, I think Memphis Zoo had a zookeeper with it was the registrar. So she could only do the records keeping part-time and the zookeeping part-time. Because both of them are a full job, it meant that she always, it was like the guilty mom that's going to work feeling, my animals aren't getting taken care of because I'm doing this paperwork. Oh, my paperwork isn't getting taken care of because I'm doing this animal work. So they eventually evolved to having their own registrar and maybe even an assistant registrar. But there's, also depending on your volume of paperwork. So when I worked at Zoo Miami, it was a government operated zoo. It was run by Miami-Dade County Parks and Recreation. So there was certain records policies we had to adhere to because they had their records management office. They had the retention office for what types of records, how long you keep them. And that was my first training when I first became a registrar. I went to this records management course for Dade County, and they said, well, the records retention is how long you keep a record before you destroy it. And I went, what? You're destroying records? Because in a zoo, we keep everything forever. There's like archival, historical, it's like, like ancestry.com, it would be like wiping out a whole family, one limb of the tree is gone, So all of that history and information, it plays into the role of the evolution of the zookeeper, the evolution of animal care, of what new techniques are developed, diets, like Dr. Bryant was saying, the nutritionists contribute the best diet for that animal, and then other people learn from that. And zookeepers sometimes have to be creative to get them to eat new things. So
I have a question for you, and it's coming from a real life situation. And this young lady ended up asking a question that I was like, ooh, I gotta ask for Rochelle. So I need to set up the situation and then get to the question. So bear with me with a moment. So there was on social media a young lady who posted on TikTok, and then and that went into Instagram. And from her post, she got over 6 million views and a gazillion comments. And of course, it's everybody in the peanut gallery, but the right people talking in the comments. And so what had happened was, she and her child, a son, always went to this one zoo, and it was a big one. I honestly forget the name, but I just remember thinking, oh, I've heard of that before. But anyway, her and her son would always go to the petting section of this zoo. And in that zoo, they had an octopus. And they were visiting it for 2 years. And he would go every weekend to look at it. And it was like, and for some reason, she said she told her son he had the 2-finger touch rule. So he could touch the octopus with 2 fingers. I don't know why she brought that up. But anyway, this one time, this octopus knows this kid, and this kid knows this octopus. So this one time, the octopus, I guess, started crawling its tentacles up his arm. Well, eventually, the kid didn't pull out, but eventually the octopus wrapped its tentacle around the arm all the way up so the top was at the shoulder. Now, it didn't do anything wrong. It didn't bite the kid. It didn't do nothing. It just wrapped the tentacle around the arm. The son did not freak out. He thought it was cool. The mom did not freak out. She did not think it was cool, but she worked hard to get the tentacle off. And then she talked about, number one, she said, I'm not blaming the octopus. I don't want it destroyed. I don't want anything to happen to it. So I praise her for saying that. But then she went into her soliloquy of, I don't understand why you have animals like this and it can get out of the tank, and it was coming out the tank, and I thought it was going to wrap my whole son up. And then she was saying, isn't there a governing body that can assure the quality of the zoo and the animals? And so I thought for a second, because I was going to respond, and I thought for a second, first of all, you can't do like a regulation on the quality of animals. I didn't think that was true. But I wasn't sure about, was there a governing body that could, certify that this zoo meets a certain standard of the way they care for their animals, the way they treat their animals, what they feed their animals, and, all that good stuff. So I wasn't sure if that was true. And if so, if are they a governing body that people can go to for complaints, and they would look into it to see what could happen? I know I just laid a lot on you. So
yeah, and I'm trying to figure out which question to answer first or attempt to answer.
I don't think there's a governing body per se, like a federal government, right?
Well, there are regulatory agencies that would oversee, depending on what species it is. Surely, there's some state and federal animal exhibiting, entity. See, aquariums are different than typical zoos too. So there, for a typical zoo, it would be U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, USDA, the local regulatory agency like Florida Fish and Wildlife, depending on if the animal was wild or captive, there might be other things you have authorizations. So other like CDC for bats, if it's a imported colony of bats, they have to go through CDC.
And primates, importation of primates. CDC.
Importation of primate, yeah. So, and then there's other animals that all you need is a fecal exam, and get a swab and check them for parasites, and there's like this whole battery of testing that you have to do.
Yeah,
but you're talking about an ambassador touch tank situation, and this is the second one I've heard about in recent weeks. The last one I heard about was a big deal where the animal actually created lesions on the child, and I don't know anybody that was there or worked with it. And I wouldn't comment on it anyway. But I think when you're taking the ambassador animal approach, you have to have animals and people that are trained. I have no idea which aquarium this is that you, and we don't need to say, but
Right.
you know, there's things that slip through the cracks sometimes too, like, you know, a kid jumping into a gorilla exhibit. It's happened, fallen in, even has happened more than one time in a zoo, and there's small children that, you know, get in, and depending on, you know, the animal care staff and the animal's behavior and how you deal with that situation. You know, you were saying the mother was very, you know, slowly trying to get the animal off of her child, and so that's good. They didn't freak out and cause an attack. You know, I mean, that's something too that a lot of times people don't realize, that these animals may be handled over and over again, but you know, you have to believe that everybody that handles the animal is handling them properly. Even if it's a fish, you know, I you can harass fish, and you know, or like with stingrays, if they have the option to come up to you or not. If they don't want to, they don't have to, you know. But something like an octopus, they're a highly intelligent animal.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of things about octopus or octopi. I'm not an aquatics person, as you can tell, but they are very intelligent and learn things really fast. They are observing people, and people don't even realize it. So, you know, maybe there needs to be some looking into by the facilities that are having the issues, and saying, you know, maybe we need to design the exhibit differently, or or only allow this type of contact with a person present, or you know, I mean, they may have a person present, but I'm sure it's not one person per animal, you know.
Yeah, I know at the aquarium here in Atlanta, I remember there's an exhibit for the smaller baby stingrays. They allow, you know, you can touch them and everything like that. But I imagine for an octopus, if it's a good size, why would you allow folks to touch it? I mean, I wouldn't think you'd want to touch that. So,
well, you know, to your point, Dr. Bryant, octopus are an escape artist. So if there's an opening for a child to stick their arms in, I'm thinking to myself, number one, you're supposed to know about octopuses. How is that even possible? Unless like the octopus physically could not get out of the container, but apparently it did. I mean, it climbed up high enough to do that. That part, like,
yeah, I would have to see the exhibit to even understand how that's possible, because I saw a little blip with a picture for that other incident, and I've never seen an aquarium, you know, like I've seen starfish in a touch tank where there's like a glass wall, and you touch the starfish, but they have somebody there it's not a big enough place where you can't see what's going on, and the attendant is right there. But I've never seen one like that for octopus, and maybe I'm behind the times, but I don't remember seeing one like that. So I don't even know. And with all this AI going on, sometimes I have no idea. I have to check. That's why I sent you a message about the dog in the airplane, because somebody said it looked like it was AI. And then I'm watching the video over and over again, and I'm like, if it's AI, how come all these people are taking pictures of it and they're reacting like in the time that the dog was? Then I found another person, like a influencer, was taking their dog on board in cabin, and they had a great day. So I'm like, no, I think we're just getting so distrustful of what we're looking at that sometimes people are seeing things and they're not sure what it is. So as far as, you know, like I said, I'd have to see the exhibit. I'd have to know the people to really give you a good answer, because without knowing their protocols, the facility, their training of their staff, or their training of their animals, I really can't, you know, give a good answer. I know it sounds like, oh, she just gave up on me, but it's like, I don't know enough about that area of exhibiting animals or wildlife as I do a traditional zoo and mammals. And, you know, I've worked with birds, reptiles, amphibians very lightly, but mostly with mammal, like larger mammals or smaller mammals, from
Yeah.
little guinea pigs to elephants.
Well, that's a large range. Well, I have to apologize to you, Dr. Bryant, and Rochelle, because I get so excited and fascinated because I love wild animals, that I kept you over the time frame. So I want to apologize to everybody for that. Because it's 10 after.
Very interesting. I think it's just an interesting topic for folks to know. And again, I'm really happy that you shared more as far as your past and different roles you played, just to share with folks just different opportunities.
Yeah, and the reason I wanted to talk about zookeepers is because a lot of times they're in the back of the scenes and people don't really know about them.
Yeah. No, there's for all those animal lovers out there, young people growing up saying they want to work with animals, there's so many different roles you can play, and I'm happy you shared a lot of that today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know, to your point, Dr. Bryant, we actually have a lot of young viewers that watch our Facebook Lives and follow us on social media. So, you know, being able to tell them, you know, especially the ones that are in vet tech schools or vet schools, you know, being able to suggest, you know, alternatives to just being a vet tech or a veterinarian. That's always
a pet sitter. You need a good pet sitter. You don't want to hire somebody to watch your animals that is not trustworthy with them. So there's a lot of options for careers working with animals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, now that it is 11 after, would you ladies like to close the show or keep going?
We'll bring you back again. Of course, I think are you scheduled again with us this year? You probably are, Rochelle, because we just
I think so. I think it's a December-ish thing. Yeah. Or maybe I'm thinking of the
We like you.
It is December.
And I think you share a lot. And as far as what I do, as far as in the airline industry, it's very important that we connect within the zoo animal industry. The role that I play. I mean, I work very closely with different folks in the zoo, get emails as far as shipping container requirements, Delta's requirements for transporting zoo animals. Talk about it all the time. Actually, some interesting things. I know we're over time, but interesting things lately is that we had a discussion last year about animal confiscation and all the things that happen with that. That comes up too. As far as it's amazing what people will do,
especially at ports of entry. You know, there's a big problem sometimes with it.
Yep. So they'll be confiscated, and then now they have to transport these animals to different zoos because where you're gonna, you know, they're not gonna euthanize them. So they'll be transported to different zoos, and it becomes a part of their collection of animals. So that comes into play. So we do a lot, and it's important. And with you, Rochelle, I don't know if I shared earlier. She and I met because of the animal transportation course because I wanted to learn more, and then we connected.
Yeah, and then you ended up being a speaker for the course.
I know. Yeah.
She was our airline gal.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, but yeah, it's really good. Very good knowing you, and I'm glad you're part of our When Pets Fly team, basically.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this was a very exciting Facebook Live, and we just really got into did a deep dive with Rochelle in the zoo world, but we definitely have a few more Facebook Lives this month. We have one every Friday with just as exciting speakers, and we hope that you all will come back to it. I wanted to give Rochelle and Dr. Bryant one last moment to say anything to our audience before we sign out.
I'm good.
I'm good. Thank you for joining us today. I'm good. Rochelle will be back with us again before the end of the year, but we're good. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, everyone, this has been another Facebook Live with Dr. Bryant, and we look forward to seeing you at our other shows. But for now, take care and have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I